more things to talk about at the end here. Very popular airplane in the 70s and 80s. They never took delivery of that airplane. It was embargoed. So that's rare. Lots of different airlines. Everybody had a 747 at one time.
That's a cool one.
That was the concept for the original Northwest plane. It wasn't delivered like that. That was the shoebox thing in the late 80s, 90s. There's still a few Lufthansa 747 flying. You want to get a ride on one, you got to go on Lufthansa or Korean or Air China. Oh, I think I doubled on that. Sorry. That's a 747 SR 400. So they did the same thing again when they built the Dash 400. They built short range, but no winglets. -747-8 carries over 250,000 pounds of cargo, over 1 million pound takeoff weight now. Will fly 12 hours, no problem. Even Eastern had a few they leased from Pan Am in the 70s. Delta was the original 747 customer as well. Just too many good pictures out there.
And more pictures being taken every day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So this is an interesting story. Alaska put in an order for 2. They never took them, but they had them they had the money down to order 2 Alaska 747s, but never delivered. The other anomaly was this airline, Universal. They were a non-skid out of Willow Run, Detroit. And they had a fleet of C-46s and DC-6s and DC-7s and DC-8s and Electras. And they wanted to get into the 747 market to do tax charters during Vietnam. And so they had a place order for 2. But their CEO got in a pissing contest with the board. And his name was Lamar Muse. And they fired him. So those orders were canceled. So they didn't take delivery of that airplane either. I am not sure that is an actual Boeing photo. I asked for a picture from Boeing Archives. They sent me that. The airplane shows that it had a first flight in March of 1970 or 71. I can't know off the top of my head. But I can't find anything that it ever was in that paint scheme. I think that's an artist rendering. Pretty sure. So, didn't fly. I guess we have some more here. There's an Air China Dash 8. That's another one you can run on. We had a couple of SPs they got early on, and then American ended up using them later. That was their final scheme before they shut down. And there's the China Clipper. Must have been an air show or something in Los Angeles in 1970. Come out and see the 747. Pan Am had the largest fleet at one time. And Japan Airlines also had the largest fleets. Okay,
No, some of those old Pan Am birds, they went to UPS later on.
Yes, a couple of them did. Oh, interesting story about this picture. I was working for Airborne Express in 1991 to 92. That's the only place that ever fired me, by the way. Quite a good thing they did. I really did well at UPS. It was a much better job. Anyway, we stayed at a hotel at the end of the runway called the Five Towns, and it was run by the New York Mafia, I'm pretty sure. You know, the guy that was behind the desk, his name was Rocco, and you didn't mess with Rocco. Anyway, the owner, his name was Tommy, he says to me one day, I'm out in the parking lot with my camera, and he goes, hey, what you doing? And I go, I'm taking pictures. He goes, you wanna go up on the roof? I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, well, just don't lock yourself out, you know, the door won't open if you lock it out. What do? I go upstairs, I put a block of wood, it's windy, the door closes, slams shut, I'm locked out. So I do my thing, I got 2 rolls of film, I shoot, everything that goes by is on approach over the hotel. I finally think, well, I guess I need to get downstairs. So I see some guy in the parking lot and I yelled out, hey, will you come up and get me? The door locked on me. I go downstairs. Tommy looks at me and goes, what did I tell you? I told you not to lock yourself out of the room, out of the roof. Yeah, these are the Pan Am SBs. United had them after they sold the Pacific routes. Lots of 747s. United used these primarily domestic and Hawaii service. They did not do international until later. Delta had 5. They were all domestic. They found they were too big for their fleet. They actually were the first airline to fly all 3 wide bodies at once. DC-10, they had DC-10s on lease, Delta-11, and a 747. Not many airlines can say that. This is the first day that the Delta airplane was painted. That was the first day they started using Delta stuff. I was in Narita, and that was a big deal for them to have a new another 747 era for them. MEA had 3, but they were always leased out to people because Lebanon was always being bombed, so they had to keep somewhere else. They never really flew for MEA. Japan had a huge cargo system at one point. They still do somewhere. They're back in the 767 cargo business. Qantas flew out of San Francisco for many years with their airplane. They go to Honolulu and then on to Australia. And one of the new ANA Dash 8 trailers. That actually picture was taken in Detroit by Bruce Avelin. That was 1974. That's actually, we used that on our postcard for our Detroit airplane show this year. Sabina also, they were the first ones to convert their airplanes back to combis because they thought they could do better with half freight, half passenger. And in Europe and everywhere else in the world, they put the freight in the back. The FAA in the United States won't put the freight in the back. The freight's got to be in the front because they're afraid the freight might break through and hurt everybody. So you don't see that in the U.S. with any airplane. If it's a combi freighter, the freight is always in the front. British Airways served Detroit for many, many years. They don't serve it anymore. Detroit again. What Cadillac worked to deal with automotive. That's primarily when it came.
The world's longest assembly line.
And World Airways Charter. And American converted some of their 747s to freighters after the oil embargo because they found they had just too much seat capacity. There's another one in Detroit that's a freighter. And there was quite a few cargo ones. This airplane was at Willow Run for like 6 years. I think it was owned by Connie Collette. He was gonna lease it to this Baltia. It never left the airport. It never flew. It was there, it would move around. You'd see it, it would be tugged over somewhere one day and then some the other day somewhere else. They finally flew it to Oscoda, it's been scrapped. But it never did revenue service. So, and 747s have been used, there's some specialty airplanes that have been out in service for many years. I thought I'd show some of that. Of course, you know about the space shuttle. That was the best way to move the space shuttle on a 747. This was some sort of, not intelligence, but communication, blocking software, jamming, something like that. That's a Dash 400. Of course, NASA had their 747 SP with the telescope in it for a while. That's gone now. GE has the 747 they use for test bed for putting on new engines. There was one fire bomber. It's now a cargo freighter. They don't have that airplane anymore. The Dreamlifter moves 787 parts from Japan and Europe to Boeing. And then you have the E4 flying White House, or flying communicate in case the world's coming to an end, the president gets to go for a ride. So, but they're actually replacing those. Air Force One, of course. Recent developments. The U.S. Air Force is currently replacing the E4 Doomsday plane with new 747-8s. That's what I got from Korean. Korean Airlines sold 5 this past year, and they're being converted to the new E4B, and there will be replaced those current 747-200 E4s. The most significant current Boeing 747 news is the new Air Force One.
Yeah.
It's an interim airplane. This flew this week into Minneapolis. It's an interim airplane that he got as a gift from the state of Qatar.
I love how they haven't shown the interior yet, which supposedly is still the same original interior.
He showcased the aircraft last week at June 19th at Andrews, and I think it flew this week. It's an unconditional gift by the government of Qatar. It's a bridge aircraft, a gap, because the highly delayed VC-25Bs are facing production problems from Boeing. That's potentially what the new one will look when it's delivered. I hope. I like that scheme. So we're talking about active operation of the jumbo jet right now. They're kind of rare. There's only a few operators if you want to get a ride. Lufthansa is the world's largest passenger 747 operator at the moment. They have both the 747-400 and the newer 747-8. I read that the 400 is to be retired either late this year or early 2027.
They keep changing it, so I believe it might.
Yeah, it depends. Korean Air operates a fleet of 747-8s, and they're supposed to be phased out by 2031. Air China has some, and an airline in Russia called Russia. They still have the 747 400 model. There's approximately 200 747s in active service globally right now. While the Queen of the Skies has been widely retired from major airlines, it remains a highly visible workforce across the aviation industry. So what began in the mid-1960s to develop, build, and fly a brand new concept was nothing short of a miracle.